So I'll ask you guys this, like, what do you do when they come to you with, hey, this is what, and I said LeBron, that's unfair. I mean, of all the guys that are taking care of it, I mean, he goes from nutrition to massage, he's got a posse, right? So I'm all in on that.
Yeah.
But like whoever, hey, this is what the best football player does. This is what the best NBA player does. That's what I want to do. Like we're talking about, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like this is what Ohtani does. You know, I want to do that. What is your go-to statement there?
Well, I always tell people, or a lot of parents and kids, I say, look, I don't say there's a bad workout. I won't look at something and say, oh man, that's crap, this crap. I say, usually where people go wrong is the application. In other words, that might be a great exercise for where LeBron or Ohtani's at their point in career. But there are levels and steps that they had to take to get to that point. So you're only seeing a moment in time. And so what you have to understand is, what was the path they took to get to that? And also what you don't get when you're looking at something like that on an internet or someone talks about something is you don't really get context. And that's probably the biggest thing. You have to know why they're doing it and what period they're doing it and what is the desired effect. So I try and tell athletes, you know, I use the terminology, I like to do things in layers. We start with the base layer and then we build another layer and that takes time. And I say it can take years. I generally will say it takes, about 6 years to build a collegiate athlete. It takes maybe 10 years to build a world-class athlete. And so you're only looking at a moment in time. So you can't necessarily say, okay, just because that athlete's doing it, it's going to have the same effect for me. You've got to figure out what makes sense for you, find the proper workout that applies to you, and then do that. I'm not going to say it like, again, that workout is trash because you never know all the particulars. But I'm going to say that may not be for you right now at this point in your development. And that's usually how I try.
Great answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
EJ?
It's it's so funny because Aaron and I work the same way. We talk about, I work a lot with infielders and hitters, and they ask me, how long is it going to take? I said, well, it matters how long you come to me in terms of just doing these exercises. And it takes, 6 to 8 years for me to make a collegiate hitter. I didn't talk about a professional hitter. I talked about a collegiate hitter. And it just takes work. And people don't understand working in the dark. Like no one sees, like Aaron said a keyword, context. Not seeing that person work in the dark and what they do. And I tell players, I said, it's not sexy. It's basic, understanding the fundamental basis and repeatability of the swing and understanding how many swings you take a day and the exercises it takes to swing the bat at this level. Because the trouble I have and why I send a lot of my athletes to Aaron is that, Aaron, I can't get them to move properly. Can you help me and assist me? Because I'm trying to train this, but this is not working in their body. And I think that's where this gets twisted, is that you do need athletic performance training to run, hit, throw, field in baseball. You need it because of the stopping and going of the activity. All of a sudden, you have to run fast once you hit the ball, and you've been kind of like in a sedate kind of area where you haven't got a lot of action. You've had little movements, and all of a sudden we're asking you to go full speed. People don't understand that. Like that's like a big deal in the sport. And I don't think people understand that. And they're asking athletes to do that on the field at any level, whether it's youth level, high school, collegiate, professionally. I don't think we understand what it takes for an athlete to move like that instantaneously without being hot and ready to go. We're asking
Right.
to move like that all of a sudden. So that takes a special person, and that person has to be trained properly in order to do that.
Oh, great explanation. One of the things that I've used, and it's probably not fair to talk to younger kids this way, but just generally speaking, even at the big league level, like elite athletes, like the best of the best in the world, they're wired differently. So we could they have a different system, that's not like ours. And so, that might feed that system perfectly, which comes in line with what Aaron was saying, in the context. One of those contexts is that nervous system isn't like everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that's why they're the best in the world. How many people are in the world? I mean, so that's the one thing that I try to let them know, that you're born with that. You're not going to acquire that. I'm not saying you can't get faster, get stronger, bigger. But when I look at that and see what that person is doing, it's good to take a template of that. So if you look at Steph Curry,
You're right.
When they talk about what about Steph Curry's workout, and I say, looks pretty solid, and he does some basic movements too. But the one thing that you're dismissing is that's not going to make you score a lot of points. It's going to make you jump higher, run faster, and all that, which is a big part of scoring a lot of points. But he's got intuition, decision making, and he takes a lot of jumpers. Like he's working on his jumper all the time. Everything he does to put the ball in the hole, including all the stuff he does before, throwing it up in the air, trick shots, all that. He's totally focused on that. So I say to them, like, well, and it's the same in baseball too. Just because I can get you bigger and stronger as a hitter, I want to, let's say you got a pretty good hitter. Well, if you have a good hitter, then you got a good swing. If you got a good swing, if you get stronger, you're probably going to hit it farther. But if you don't have a good swing yet, me getting you bigger and stronger is not gonna help your swing better. Or
Right.
if you're, if you want to get down into it dirty, I say, hey, getting you bigger and stronger is not gonna help you understand or determine the spin on that ball.
Yes.
It's not gonna help you.
Yes.
Same with throwing the ball harder. Now, I mean, everybody is so, you could say what you want. And they say the pitching is better. No, the pitching is harder to hit. That doesn't mean it's better because they're throwing faster. But if you look at walks and everything else, walks are nothing. They're just going for swings and misses.
Right.
And 100 miles an hour. So you're not gonna, I can make you throw the ball harder, but I can't help you locate. I don't have an exercise for that. I don't have an exercise that has you determining that he's going to throw you a breaking ball here instead of a fastball and freeze you. So, again, that's where the separate athletic performance and sports performance happens, right? This whole decision-making process. I know we've seen that, and I've argued this before. We've seen that with deceleration. That's a big thing now. We're going to train deceleration, right? Eccentrics. And I say, well, that's going to be hard. Well, it's just about eccentric training. No, it's not just about that. It's about decision making. It's about the cognitive aspect of deceleration. So when you set up a cone at 10 yards and you say, hey, we're going to work on deceleration. I want you to run as fast as you can and stop at that cone. Okay. Well, is that better than nothing? Like, I don't know. I mean, it does something. But in a game, when you're running the football, you don't know you have to stop at that cone.
Right.
You don't know that ball's going to take a bad hop. You don't know that. You don't know that you're gonna go on a hit and run, and then you're gonna look and it's a line drive. You don't know it's a line drive. We can't determine that. So the cognitive aspect, people forget about that change of direction stuff.
Yeah.
Change of direction. The velocities and force that's produced there is because it's like that. Well, you can't do that on your own. It happens. You can't. If you watch it, people do these jumps with weights. It's not the same thing. The velocity is not the same. All right, well, we'll go lighter. Well, you can go lighter. You can take the weight off at all and jump up and down. It's still not the same velocity because you're determining when you jump. In the ever-changing world of agility, you have to adapt to an ever-changing environment. You don't know when that's happening. That's when the thing.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's very, very different.
Wow.
Yeah, I like where you went on that because it kind of answers a couple of questions that I was going to go to earlier. This guy's been doing this to me all morning, man. Even when I text this morning, we like texted each other at the same time.
Same time.
Yeah, and then I almost went there. Great minds think alike. Just as you texted that, I'm like, oh, yeah. This guy's been reading my mind all morning. But
well, go ahead. What you got?
I like where you're going with that because, in essence, what you're saying is something that I always tell athletes, because parents will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, I got this golfer, I got this swimmer." I said, "Look, I can only try and affect one aspect of it, the athleticism. You've got to still work on those other skill sets, and." And I get this right now, and I'm struggling with this with some of the baseball players because they're starting to become juniors and seniors. And there's this whole, well, I got to get bigger. I got to get bigger. It's like, well, why do you have to get bigger? Kid's at 185, he throws 90 miles an hour. I got to get 200 pounds. Everyone tells me I got 200. Why? What is going to be the correlation between that extra 15 pounds? Because people
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I get that. It's a fight that I have all the time. And I'm like, it's about force production. It's not about just your body size. And then I always have to go back to, and this is what you've basically said, is where's your bridge? In other words, where's your bridge from your athletic training to the technical and tactical side of your sport, which translates, i.e., into performance?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people skew either all they do is want to hit balls all day, or all they want to do is but they don't. And even those who have some sort of balance, they're not saying, okay, now what activities do I do that are going to bridge it? Or what activities over here in this athletic side that I can kind of quasi do that bridges to, my swing or my sprint, or you know what I'm saying? And I think that's what you're getting at, is you always have to be conscious of, where's my bridge? Why am I doing this? What's the translation? How can I weave these things closer together so I get the desired effect?
Yeah. So it's just, so the way you would put that is I can't directly affect your yards per carry, your batting average, your points per game.
Right.
But what I can do is give you the physical qualities to be able to do that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right. So if you can't run fast anyway, then your yards per carry are going to be a tough one.
Right.
You can't jump. If you're not a very good jumper and you're weak, then it's not going to help you rebounding, because rebounding is very intuitive. There's so much cognitive measure that has to happen.
Yeah.
So
yes.
It's almost like, you talk about bridging, it reminds me of all that stuff from Europe back in the Soviet days where, we found out that plyometrics is the bridge between speed and strength. And that's the kind of bridge that you gotta make. So that's only going to affect the physical qualities, right? So, if you have somebody that's got really good lower body strength, however you want to measure it, but they're not jumping high, well, then you know what to do. Mm-hmm. If they're jumping moderately higher than they should with that leg strength, then you know where to go. Get them stronger. Right. It's an easy get, right? So, I mean, that's, again, we're talking about the same kind of thing. That's why certainly supports my theory that what we do is athletic performance, not sports performance. Like, do we influence it?
Yes.
But there's nothing I can do to directly, right?
Right.
That's why these days I say, hey, I was associated with that championship. I can't tell you if I helped or not. I don't really know.
Right.
So, I mean, I think, and the other part was you talked about kids getting bigger. So this should interest you, right? haven't written a program for hypertrophy to put muscle on in
Mhm.
shit 30 years.
Can you say that again, please?
Oh yeah, please. I want to hear that.
Can you say
I
that
have
again?
not. I have not written a program to put muscle on somebody. With my sole intent was to put muscle on somebody in over 30 years.
Thank you.
We've done that.
Oh
We did that a lot in football early on at UCLA.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
just I think it's probably still happening, but not to the degree that it was back then. Like it was, you're just going to get big when you get here.
Yeah.
Wide receiver, running back, whatever. And subsequently, that same training unintentionally made you run faster and jump higher anyway, because you were doing progressive overload.
Right.
Right. But since then, I've worked it just on strength, pure strength.
It's a daily battle, especially with kids who are going to, who may get drafted or signed or that sort of thing. There's this model that is thrown at them
Wow.
that,
Didn't know that.
yeah, that's from these coaches and agents and
Oh,
people who just want this certain profile that has nothing to do with the outcome of their performance. It just doesn't.
You
And
seen it, EJ?
yeah, it's funny because I'm sitting here just going, thank you for being here today, Bob. Because I'm like going, hey, cognitive development, reactionary skills, there's things you can't measure, like cutting this way on a ball that you misplayed in outfield, and you said there's a force that you have to and change your direction. People don't even think about that. And that's what happens. And so they're trying to, I see all these things out there on the internet that say, do this, do that, and this will be fixed. There's no short term to
No.
this. There's Mother Nature. There's Mother Nature that's going to allow you to get stronger as the years go on. And it's how you train correctly. And I think people buy into a lot of this stuff. And by you just saying that, Bob, to me, it just, same thing we've been talking about for a lot of years, Aaron and myself, is just that, people don't understand that athletes react. Athletes react. They don't
Right.
stop and go, I need to do this. They react. They're wired differently. They react on situations. And I think that's what I want everyone out there today to understand, that it's athletics. It's not a sport, and this is how you train for a sport.
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of athleticism to start with. Well, so let's go back to the idea of being agile, right? So the only time, most of the drills, most of the drills that we do with cones or ladders and all that, like, oh, ladders are, those are crap. They don't do anything. Well, they don't. They do something now. But I mean, if you're saying you're going to get faster doing that, I'd say, well, maybe. But there's some ways.
Yeah.
I hate that whole thing. There's 100 ways to skin a cat. I said, yeah, but there's only one way to do it the right way. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a million ways to skin the cat. Science can prove us there's not a million ways to create power with a barbell. I can take 2 cans of green beans and then do jumps with them, and I'll probably get something out of it, but probably not as good as using, a barbell or plyometrics or depth jumps. It's the same kind of thing, but so when we talk about agility and coordination, you can't be agile unless you're coordinated.
Yes.
So the real value of cone drills or ladder drills is it's teaching coordination, because otherwise, without that, you'll never be agile. So now agility, when they say, hey, this is an agility drill, it's only an agility drill if you don't know where you're going. If I'm the one demanding the drill, I'm pointing, or, if you look at agility, I think Thomas Kerr is a German scientist from years ago. He wrote a book. I don't even know if I got it. Maybe I got it here. No, I don't. Is reacting in an ever-changing environment. In other words, you have no idea. You need to run from here to there, but there's in the way there, you don't know what you have to do. Laterally jump, backwards, forwards, you have no idea. Now that's agility training. unfortunately, you can do that, but the specificity is lost because that thing only happens one time in the universe. And then the next one happens only one time in the universe. It's like a running back, right? Yeah, they make cuts and react to everybody, but I doubt that they ever duplicate it. It's like every one of those runs is like a snowflake, right? So you can't really say you can work on decision making. Okay, that would work. But to say you can duplicate that, I'd say it's impossible. But you can attenuate it. You can say, oh, let's just try to we'll make you react quickly.
Yeah.
And things like that. It's kind of what the military changed a little bit. Like in the old days, well, actually not that long. They run these military guys to death, right? And make them do 1 million push-ups and 1 million sprints and run 20 miles in the backpack. Yeah. And they realized that the number one thing that kept them from being deployed was soft tissue injuries. Yeah. Bad backs,
yep.
bad quads.
Yeah, they're trash.
Yeah, not wounds. And they said, we got to change this somehow. So I know what they're trying to do is to toughen these guys up and get them like physically prepared for austere environments. But what they realized was, everybody's going into these things with heart rates at 200 beats, right? For sure, which you can imagine, it's life or death. So what they did instead was started to determine these drills where they could still do the physical activity, but at the end of it, what's the intent? The intent is to take that building, or the intent is to stop that battalion coming at you, the enemy. So then they would run some drill, stop, and in 10 seconds, here's what you got to do. And so then it turned into a military thing. Mm-hmm. So now that is specific. Now they got the heart rate up. They got that. Now it's exactly what they want to do. That's the same reason why many coaches in basketball will do the conditioning and then immediately go to the foul line, because nobody goes to the foul line not breathing hard. So you're going to shoot the fouls while you're, so those are the things that will equate kind of what you're doing. So yeah, it's the whole, you're right about people not thinking about things and how they get stacked. What's first? What is it? It's the whole tee, toss, throw, right? Mm-hmm. Let's start with the tee. And I told people many times that the greatest hitters in the game start off with a tee every day.
Yeah. Just
to get loose and to groove the pattern.
Yep.
But these guys want to get back there and start throwing 90. Like, you ain't learning how to hit that. You ain't learning how to hit that curveball. Just throwing curveballs all day long. You gotta have your swing. So it's very much of a stacking thing. And again, the hypertrophy thing, I don't know where that comes from. I didn't know that was a thing. I obviously haven't heard anybody at the big league level, and I've only been with them for a year, tell me like, hey, so and so needs to get bigger, or hey, I want to get bigger. I haven't heard any of that, but I haven't.
Oh yeah,
it's a thing.
It's a thing. Yes, it is.
I will say though, when I got to the game, and I didn't know what position any of these dudes played, right, when they first came into spring training, that the pitchers are bigger than they've ever been. They're huge. Likely that has something to do with throwing the ball hard too. Bigger people. So we know through science. Science still tell you bigger people are usually stronger than smaller people. Period. Right. Whether you're overweight or not, has nothing to do with body composition. Okay. But that really surprised me a lot.
I get it a lot. Yeah. I want to switch gears here.
Okay.
And something that me and EJ face a lot, and we're at one end of the spectrum, and you're at the higher end of the spectrum. And I want to see if you see what we're seeing still at the higher end and how it's affecting athletes. And what I'm talking about is I find myself doing more remediation work with athletes than anything else. In other words, I get more athletes that come to me at 16, 17, 18, who can't lunge, who can't balance on one foot. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I actually have to go back and teach these motor skills, because they never learned them when they were younger, or they were never introduced when they were younger. Or, again, we come from an era where I always say a lot of our repertoire of movement skills came from play.
Yes.
Because there's a lack of play, because of a lack of PE and all those other things. These kids nowadays are kind of thrust into structured training environments. I'm playing soccer at 4 years old. I'm playing baseball, where there's a narrow set of movement skills that they have to use. And so they never develop anything outside of that. Are you seeing yourself having to fight that same thing at the higher levels, even though those guys get to that level, but maybe they're having more injuries, or maybe they're not performing as well or as consistently because they can't do a proper lunge or a squat, or they've got a limited range of motion because they never really, they can throw, but they've never really worked on the whole arm system. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Because it's everything's been so isolated with what they've been doing. Or are most of them lucky enough to skate by? I like I said, I find myself most of the time doing remediation work or unlearning before I ever get to teaching anyone anything, before I get to any kind of building.
So you said a couple things there, and I don't write fast enough.
Sorry about that. My mind goes everywhere, man.
No. I thought of a bunch of stuff too. So the first thing I will tell you is the toughest thing to do to athletes is not to educate them; it's to re-educate them.
Yes.
That's hard because they're already locked in, right? So, and the perfect example is, and I'm sure the other teams have the same kind of NFL, NHL, you name it. They've already been with a strength coach over there for a couple of years, and now you have to you have to dismember what they're doing and get them onto you, whatever you're doing. You know? In my case, I think I'm 100% right 100% of the time, so we're going to change all of this. But okay, look, to be fair to these kids today, they didn't have the luxury of doing what we had to do and were told to do. Get outside. Go play. Lights come on. And everybody thinks it's a joke. Oh, you all did the same shit. Well, when the lights come on, you come home. So we ran and played as many games as we could, and hide and go seek and all that other stuff. And we didn't sit on our butts watching TV maybe at nighttime from 7:30 to whatever, when you watch Gomer Pyle or Beverly Hillbillies or whatever, and then you go to bed, right? So that's something that I had to. So just so y'all know, I have a 37-year-old daughter, 2 grandkids. She's married, lives 10 minutes from the stadium, which, by the way, is good for me on that day game the next day. So I can stay down there on a 10-minute drive. But I also have 16 and 18-year-old boys. So, we came to that whole, too much screen time and you're on the thing. And at some point it clicked in my head, and I can't remember what this was. I didn't know, and this was years back, I didn't know that when these guys are on their games, and my son likes to play, the football and all that. I mean, the graphics are unbelievable, but that you can message anybody you want. So you can talk to people on, and you're playing them on the phone and all that. I realized that's how they communicate, right? That's just the way it is. When you're in a locker room today, it's all like this, dude. It's not like the locker rooms that we've been on, right? Guys are playing cards, they're playing dominoes, they're hanging out, they're talking, they're watching the game, whatever it is on the screen of the club. It's none of that. You ain't hanging out at the track after workouts, taking your shoes off, still sitting down after a workout and just hanging.
Yeah.
They don't do that. They go right to the phone. And I think at times we're all guilty of that too. But again, that's how we connect now. So for them to say they're less athletes because of that is probably accurate, but that's the way it is. They're not, the only practice they get is when they're at practice. So we came off the baseball field and we went and played basketball afterwards. A bunch of kids down at the park playing pickup. So we just kept playing. So you got to kind of have to be fair to them a little bit there. But I'll tell you about this locked in thing back in the mid 80s, right? So I was fortunate to be associated with 2 national soccer championships and with the greatest soccer coach in college ever was, Ziggy Schmid, who, God bless him and God rest his soul. He taught me everything about soccer. So on that soccer team, Lee Jones, Max Moore, Brad Friedel. Let me just tell you this, and it's not even a brag, but this is the facts. During my time at UCLA, those 10 years, to this date, only because of the ever-changing environment, strength conditioning, and people are getting a little more movable, I probably trained more men's soccer World Cup national team and Olympic team players than any strength coach in U.S. history. Just today, right now, if you were to ask somebody, I'd put all the money in my wallet right on the ground, say, show me your guys, all those dudes. Okay. So here's the story. So we had a day, it was kind of rainy outside, and like, well, coach said, well, let's call practice. And I said, well, can we do something? I said, well, yeah, why don't we go down into Poly Pavilion? So there was no practice, but the gym was all, the bleachers were seated. So it was, a big giant floor. So what do you want to do? I said, why don't I take those guys down there to play basketball? Because they never really go in the gym, okay, let's go down there. Because I had men's basketball too. And so we go down there and they were so thrilled, right? So I said, oh, here's the rules, all right? Regular basketball, but there's no out of bounds. All right, so you can dribble, the length of the court, the rink, whatever you want to call and play. So the way I tell the story, this is how you can determine if they were athletes or not, right? We played for probably an hour. I bet the score was like 8-10. They were so bad.
Yeah.
Dribbling balls off their feet.
Right.
Balls over the hoop, off the hoop. Not even, I tell them guys, if it wasn't even for the floor, you wouldn't have hit anything. but put them on the pitch. We won 2 national championships with them. Yeah. So, they're so locked into that sport, and soccer was one of those sports early on that they probably played, soccer was the very first model of club teams. Mm-hmm. Yes. Dudes that were running those club teams were making 200, 300 grand a year running those things. It was unbelievable. And more now, but so were they good athletes? No. Were they good soccer players? Undescribably. Yeah. In Europe and, World Cup, and some of them now, and Chris Henderson now is the head of development at Miami. These guys are really good. So, they're playing more of their sport, but they don't do anything else. And the lifting that goes along with those sports are likely to be guided by those who aren't certified, don't have the experience. Here's an exercise for soccer. Like, I don't know of any exercise that's for a sport. I don't even know what that means. There's no, like baseball, right? There's not one lift a baseball player can't do. Not one. Whatever it is, clean and jerk, you put that in there. Now, is that the best exercise to do? No, there's probably some others. But when they say, oh, baseball players shouldn't do that lift that we heard all the time.
Yeah.
Or track and field, hey, be careful. We don't want to lift heavy weights. Jackie Joyner was squatting 400 pounds for me. So, you tell me whatever you want. But so that's the part about they're just not getting taught for the very reasons we've just talked about for the last, several minutes is internet, social media. Look, God bless those people running their own joints like you guys do. I don't have those kind of pelotas. So I got to have that check coming in and know it's going to be there, right? So my hat's off to y'all for doing that. And you got to put butts in the seats. And so you got to market, right? And whatever they're marketing's got to be bright and shiny. But that doesn't mean it's going to be effective and safe.
Yes.
So that's kind of that's a long-winded answer to yes. We're seeing people who have a hard time getting into athletic positions, but not positions that are familiar to their sport.
No.
right?
Mm.
And so that's the, that's my soccer story. I remember watching those guys, and let me tell you something. They must have ran 10 miles, each one of those guys in that gym. They were so happy to be on the gym. They had no idea that it became a conditioning session. Now, they're some of the fittest guys on campus. But when you watch those guys shoot a ball, oh, I sat up in the mezzanine level and watched them, and I just loved watching them do it because they were having so much fun playing and so little fun scoring that it was just. But Gaston Green, I don't know, some of you might
Gaston Green.
that. So I had
Yeah.
him as a running back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this dude runs a solid 4.3, 4.4, and just so here's something that you'll like, Aaron. The Flipper Anderson,
Yeah.
Yep.
Paco Craig,
Yep.
and I can't remember the fourth guy. They ran. This is no kidding, and the track was full. They decided to run in an intramural 4x1. And so they say, let's go do that. So they put on sneakers,
Mm-hmm.
and then it traveled through campus, and then all of a sudden Drake Stadium was packed. They end up qualifying for the NCAA. They had an NCAA qualifying time in the 4x1 in sneakers.
In sneakers. Oh, that's great.
Right? Right? I mean, just that's how athletic these dudes were.
Well, that's great.
That's a great story.
But at the same time, Gaston Green could not barely get to mid shin in a toe touch.
Yeah.
No flexibility at all.
Yeah.
Now later on, he pulled his hamstring. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not so fond of less flexibility means you're going to get injured. I think if you have a level of, so mark this down from an old man. If you have a level of flexibility, whatever it is, and the original standard of your flexibility decreases, you're going to be in trouble. But the fact that you're not at 90 degrees or whatever, I think means very little.
Take it from a sprinter who could never touch his toes from high school on. And I never had hamstring injuries. That was probably one of the injuries I never had to worry about. You know?
I think a loss of range of motion is definitely a trigger. But outside of that, here's the other thing that happens too. When these people get caught up into range of motion, they start promoting injury. How? They create greater ranges of motion, but don't strengthen the greater range. Injury happens at extreme ranges of motion.
Right.
So they're doing all this other stuff to get nice, and then they don't have strength back here.
Right.
Or whatever. So I mean that's they say, we got to work on his flexibility. Man, I wouldn't mess with anybody's flexibility in the pros. None. Yeah. Zero.
Whoa. Arm injuries. Hello.
Yeah. You just got to let them. Yes. And can you imagine, the torque that's already getting produced with a swing? I think 5 more degrees on a swing and you're blowing out a disc. Unless you're, off season.
Wow.
So in season, you can't.
Right.
You can't do anything. And off season, these guys are gone. Yeah.
There's some things you just don't mess with. You don't have to fix everything. I think where people in our business go wrong is as soon as they get someone, they're looking to see what they can fix.
Right. That's a great point.
Instead of just saying, hey, what do you do? Let's see what you do. And, what do we really need to work on? These wholesale changes that everyone wants to do in an athlete. And I think at the elite level, it's more about managing your athleticism than it is about trying to recreate something or build anything.
Well, I talk about that with the pros. They say, like in baseball, the perfect example, like, hey, nobody's coming up to baseball or football and saying, okay, we drafted you, but we need to get you faster. We drafted you, but we need to get you bigger. We drafted they've already got what they want, so nobody's saying that. I mean, that's ridiculous. They're in the big leagues. You need to keep them healthy.
Yes.
And if you get a little byproduct, I mean, that's I said, the physically developmental phase, I'm not going to say it's stopped. Certainly there's something you can add to it, but it's not the focus.
Right.
The reason a hitter gets better year after year is because of experience in the big leagues. And maybe he's done something with his swinging or something, but not no,
Oh.
what you said, Aaron, no overhauling is going to happen.
Yeah.
We're going to draft you as a power hitter, but we really want you to steal bases.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, we know you're a singles hitter, but we want you to hit for power. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to draft you. No,
Yeah.
just leave it right there, you know, but keep them healthy. And, but the thing is, players only get better at the big league level if they can handle it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
some can and some can't, and then you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
availability is the best ability,
It
basically.
is. Yeah, it is. And you
Af-
can't, you know, if guys want to get paid, you ain't getting paid, not giving up numbers. You got to give
Exactly.
numbers if you're going to get paid. And if you're going to get, and the only way to give numbers is to be healthy. So,
Yeah.
you know, be smart about how you do it. And as a college coach, you know, I think a lot of college coaches who go professionally think, oh man, I'm going to really make these guys, like, it's a whole different thing, dog.
Different
I'm telling
time.
you, it's you know, I tell you, I said, you know, your goal may to be on ESPN someday, but you've never lived until your name goes across the ticker saying that, you know, Aaron Thigpen pulled a hamstring doing pregame conditioning. You know, or Eric Johnson ended up hurting his back by squatting something he hasn't done in 10 years, you know, so dissolve that thought.
Yeah. So I know we've kept you about an hour and a half here. I want to finish up with just one final question. I'd love to have you back because I think we're just scratching the surface.
I think we
Yeah,
are.
this is a ball, man. I love
This
this.
is great.
And I like to be, you know, respectful of people's time and that sort of thing. And it's a lot to edit. From a personal standpoint, it's a lot to edit. But what would be your parting, I guess, words of wisdom to the developing athlete parent who's kind of getting into, you know, getting their kid into sports, and what are some of the things that they need to always kind of keep on as their North Star in terms of when they're, you know, how their athlete should be training and developing, if that makes
Yeah, well, look, I think, you know, and I didn't think about it that much, but when I kind of gave that whole, you know, where's the ceiling?
Yeah.
Right? Where's the ceiling? The ceiling of elite athlete, the best of the best, the world's greatest, the world record holders. Where are they at? Your child shouldn't be doing that. He doesn't need that. His system isn't organized or complex enough to even accept that sort of training. Learn the basic exercise movements, right? Essentially what you want to do is get into a program that teaches movement and fundamental exercise, right? Basic patterns, squat patterns, pressing patterns, push-ups, lunges, things that, you know, and you say, well, why is a lunge? Well, is he going to run? I mean, what looks more like a run than a lunge? No, right? Same sort of thing. Get your upper body strong, get your lower body strong, and strength underpins all movement, period. Strength underpins change of direction. Strength underpins speed. It underpins vertical jump. Total body strength in baseball is absolutely necessary. It's not in the wrists. It's not in the forearms. It's not in your grip.
Total body.
The ball is thrown from your big toe to the tip of your finger. Same with a swing. Your swing comes from your toes to the end of the bat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had an 11-year-old just the other week. I explained that to them, and all they wanted to do was tricep curls.
I remember that.
I had this conversation. He goes, I want it. And he goes, I want to work on my triceps. I said, why do you want to work on your triceps? He says, well, I want to hit the ball harder. I said, well, do you know that this is where power from your swing comes from? It's force transferred from the, you know, from the ground up through the body, rotational forces come through, you know, and the arms are a transfer of that force. And I explained this to him, and I said, well, so now that you understand where your power comes from, what do you want to do? I want to do some tricep presses.
Oh my!
Because he saw something, he heard something, that,
Oh gosh.
you know, uh, so I'm
Yeah,
so
no.
glad that, and I know my question might have been leading because I knew, like I said, we've been in simpatico all morning. I knew you're
Yeah,
probably
no.
where it did. So I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you used that illustration because it's almost the same words that I just used with that young man.
And I'll add one more thing because I like to look at what's happening out there. And so now it just reminded me that I wanted to tell you also this, that elite athletes are likely the worst athletes to pattern yourself after.
Oh, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Not because of them, just because of all the things we just talked about.
Yes.
How good they are, their nervous system, their commitment, all those things. You can't imagine what it takes to be like that. They don't think that. It's just what they do, right?
Worst thing that happens in track and field, and I'm sure you can attest to that.
Yeah. So and I say, Danny, God bless Danny Everett came on there. Guy could barely squat the bar, but he was fast, and I knew that it wouldn't take much to make him faster because he's not strong.
Yes.
He's such a great kid too. Steve Lewis looks like Adonis now. I mean, I guess he's got to hit the weights really hard, but back then, same kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to understand where all this is coming from, right? You have to understand how this thing is happening. So the other part of this is be persistent. Like don't keep pushing the thing. Somebody sent me a thing about Tom Brady, Well, everybody talks about Tom Brady's combine, it was by many standards very poor, right? His results, he wasn't fast, he didn't jump high, none of that stuff. But he did have cognitive qualities. I mean, he could move, right? But hell, this guy, he was fourth string on the Patriots. Fourth.
Yes.
Right? He wasn't playing unless Drew Bledsoe gets injured in that game.
That's right.
True. People don't forget that.
We never hear of Tom Brady. Maybe on another team, but for him, he's just going to be that fourth guy with a bad run and the video clip, and he doesn't make it. But he's like, no, I just kept going. I kept going. And so that's the other part of the persistence. Like you're talking about, EJ, it takes time.
Yeah, it does.
It takes time for that to happen. So he went over the years. He wasn't the starting quarterback in Michigan either. I mean, this guy just kept coming. Yeah. And now he's arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, right? So I think the other part of that is there is nothing fast that's going to happen, right? You're going to be consistent. And I know you guys know this, people that want to do what you guys are doing, I tell them, don't do anything with this kid until you test his jump and a 10-yard dash. Don't do nothing. Because you're going to want to show that every single month because it's going to get better and better. It's going to do your business and it's going to do him at the same time. Just be simple and just keep monitoring, measure and manage. And hey, look at that. You're getting better with these squats and these lunges and this bench press and this little box jump we have you doing in that 40-minute workout.
Yeah. You hear that, people? 40 minutes.
40 minutes. You didn't say an hour.
Didn't say,
right?
Yeah.
I haven't written a workout over 45 minutes in 30 years.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's Boogie. Let's go.
That's right.
Ace.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, great. It's great having you, man. Again, I hope this was a great experience for you because I'd love to have you on. I know we're, again, just scratching the surface and there's all kind of topics that we can cover.
I got my own notes. Damn. It's on y'all.
Love it.
EJ, anything you want to add? Or
Aaron, I tell you, it's been a great roundtable today, Aaron and Bob. Always a pleasure, man, just to speak to other professionals, but somebody that I know Aaron respects, and Bob, I respect you. So, on that note, people out there, thanks for listening to us today. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
This is Coach Aaron, the source. We'll see you.